Hi. I think I'm live. I think it's working. I'm coming to you in a different way today just to accommodate the guest that wants to come on today. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Bear Vishera. I am the host of Fearless Friday, where we get together on Friday and talk about all things related to fear. And most recently, we've been talking about the collective environment, talking about the uprise in the awareness of child trafficking and human trafficking and child exploitation. And through the mission that I am currently serving through Freedom for the Children, I've been connected to so many people. People have just been coming into my awareness. And I have been so grateful to meet the people that I'm meeting who are at the front line of seeking justice and creating awareness in our communities for greater connections so that we can band together and create it's such a hard topic, it's such a hard topic. We want to create safety and protection for our youth and for our parents and for our people and eradicate this kind of enslavement, this modern day enslavement. And so last week, if you joined me last week, hey Corey, last week we had Sarah on, and she was talking about her experiences with ritual satanic abuse in her family and her survival story. And this week we are live with Ryan, and he will be on in just a few. And so if you're just joining now for the first time, thank you for joining Fearless Friday for the first time. Again, I'm your host, Beverly Shara, and I came into this work just by living my own experiences, going through molestation and child exploitation when I was young, not from my family, but from the community around me. And as I grew up, I did go through several experiences of assault, and I did the things. And so this definitely a hard topic, and it definitely connects us all because we all have a heart that's rooted in love and eradication of this kind of modern day enslavement. So Ryan's on here right now, and I'm just going to edify him before he gets on. Ryan is a former Marine, and he's a current weapons and tactics instructor who, instead of being a military contractor, focuses his effort on fighting genocide and human trafficking in Southeast Asia. He's also an agent for the Light Rescue nonprofit. And so we're going to bring him on screen right now because he definitely has more to say than I do. And I'm so glad that you're here. If you have any questions, I have my computer open, and please do ask your questions. And you'll see me look over because my computer is right here, and I do want to get to your questions. So we're adding Ryan to the show right now. And hopefully it'll work. Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me? Let me know that you can hear me. And thank you for being on this mission with me. And it's really hot outside today. So, hey, Ryan.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh my God, so good. How are you?
Good, good. Sorry, I'm just figuring this thing out.
I feel you. I'm generally not on my phone either, and I'm usually on my computer, and I'm outside, and all the things have shifted just so we can make this happen with you and I, because I know there's things in place that prevent us from being safe sometimes, and so I just wanted to make sure that you felt safe, and we did this in a good way.
No, I appreciate that. And yeah, let's get started. So, where did you? I was listening to you as I was coming on, talk about your experiences, and uh, can definitely relate to an extent because growing up, I was rescued by local cops from a bad situation, and not all my siblings made it out of that. And from that, I've always wanted to, be the guy that kicks down the door and does the rescue. And it's nothing like that at all. Most of it is actually trying to train those guys up from at least my perspective, because you want to have indigenous forces protecting their own. You don't always want to have the U.S. guy that comes and does some rescues and goes, because that's a problem with the to put it in layman's is can you hear me
Yeah,
on this? I don't know if I'm
absolutely.
loud enough,
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
but a lot with a lot of nonprofits, you got this adventure tourism thing where it's just a phase and people go for 2 weeks and hope they're making a difference. And you really have to put in time and effort. Like where I'm at now, I feel like I'm halfway to the point where I need to be to truly be making a difference, but I'm somewhere. So
Well, I mean, it's hard, right? It's a hard topic, and it really means that we have to come face to face with some of the fears that we have inside of us that stop us from telling our truth and telling our story. And so, thank you for sharing vulnerably that you also went through an experience that, kept you unsafe in your childhood too. And that was, as you grew up, that was the thing that sparked your inspiration to do more. And so I know you're part of the Light Rescue mission, and it's a nonprofit. And can you tell us more about that?
yeah, so the Light Rescue is pretty much the brainchild. We branched off from other nonprofits. So I used to teach at a counterterrorism school, uh, and in the West Coast, and so I had a lot of very capable students. And my thing was I would train contractors, but I never went out on contracts myself just because it's a year long or more commitment, for X amount of money, and money's never really been an interest of mine. Especially while I'm still young and I still have opportunity. I'd rather get the experience and try to make a difference. And so I meet a lot of really capable guys, and some of my students generally they're older guys than me, and they're just trying to retune their skills because a lot of paramilitary skills are very perishable. You have to keep them in practice even if you've done it for 10 years. And you know so one of my students, he's up in Wyoming, and me and him decided, we don't like this big nonprofit thing because generally it's just a lot of politics involved. So we'd rather do our own smaller detail, uh, more involved with the training and the raids than the aftercare, because you need the big money for aftercare.
Mm.
Uh, Aftercares are really probably the most expensive process because you need to have trained medical staff. You need to have trained therapists, because the trauma that these kids go through, it's not like you rescue them and you put them in one place and they're all of a sudden better, because they train these children from very young so that, one verbal example is, they think it's normal to sit on a man's stick. Like that's what they're taught. So that, to them, it's, we're the bad guys right off the bat because they were making money and had some semblance of what they thought was freedom,
Mm-hmm.
because these guys get in their heads. Ignorance is taught, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's a trauma-based mind control program that's taught to the children, and they just think that this is normal, and it's not normal to the person on the outside who is advocating for child safety or advocating for safety for humanity. So you got connected to
Yeah.
these other nonprofits that weren't so great, and then you decided to do something on your own. So is Light Rescue is it your mission, or is it a mission that you found that was um, uh,
it's
later on?
it's one that me and one of my students founded. It's his name and his idea. For me, I like to try to stay a little bit free of titles
Yeah.
if and where I can. Obviously, I'll be the lead instructor in this location and a co-instructor here. For me, it's more of a matter of trying to get out there, because just the overhead for a mission overseas is extraordinary.
Yes.
Uh,
So,
but that's where it can get really lax, because for a large nonprofit, I think to become 501c3 registered and all that stuff, uh, you only need 2% of your funds to go towards the actual mission,
right.
which sadly makes sense too when you spend enough time out there and you try to, live your own life. Because, these people that are out there 24/7 and live there months on end, are truly giving up a large portion of their own time.
Yes, and I still just don't think 2% is enough to give to the actual mission.
No.
Yeah. So,
No.
yeah, I'm on the same team as you, just purifying what that mission even means and how we contribute. So when you are training, are you allowed to talk about a little bit about your training and how you train?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So a lot of the tactics. So for AIM, the Agape International Missions, they have a SWAT team that they fund. So in order to get the police on your side, you more or less have to bribe a team to your side. You have to create an incentive because the government, different governments operate differently, but they're generally not going to just accept you coming in and demanding that you have a counter sex trafficking team.
Hmm.
If they allow it at all, you have to train them, you have to fund them, and you have to maintain them. Uh, so usually during these classes, each officer will be paid X amount of money to do the training. It allows them a promotion, and then we have to vet them as well. So they have to have a good reason for wanting to be part of the team, not just the money. And so it's a process, and it gets quite lengthy. But in and of itself is quite political as well.
Hmm.
But as far as the training and the tactics go, it's uh, most of most of the guys on my team come from military background or police background, and then we're not the only ones doing it. There's actually a plethora of guys, for better or for worse reasons, trying to get in there. Because one of the issues I've had is actual contractors contacting me, being like, "Hey, we want to get in there because we're trying to get some contracts in this region or this country," and it's like, we're not here for that and to promote that. We're here solely for this mission. So you're bringing something in, with the wrong intention. So you got to be really careful with who you're attached to. Because
Hmm.
I've had people approach me just out of the blue, like on a mission, will come up to me, "Hey, you're this guy, right?" Which is why I try to do a little bit to protect myself and my identity, because it's not about me, it's about them. And if you're really about it, it needs to you got to maintain that,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of people that I know 3 people personally overseas that call themselves doctor, or someone calls them doctor something, and I'm not going to put their names on blast, but they're not a doctor. They don't have a doctorate. They live in their own, quasi fantasy, and they might have a number of rescues to their name, but that's not even verifiable and in a as well. So there's a lot of BS floating around. So it takes time to build these relationships and to really find out a person's true colors and where they stand on these issues, and if they're really willing to uh, put in and sacrifice. Because some people reach a breaking point. They spend so much time over there that they just crack and just, they're so desensitized to the rescues, so desensitized to the numbers, because some of these rescue centers can be filled up in a matter of weeks.
Hmm.
That's the easy part. The hard part's trying to keep the kids there, and that's why I have a lot of respect for the big nonprofits, that fund the rescue centers and maintain the schools and the protective clinics. Because that's another thing we do, is we train the security teams that actually stay on site and protect the children, and they're not always the best guys. And there's not always a clear way to vet them and to check with everyone. So I mean, there's a lot of checks and balances, and a lot of checking yourself as well,
Yeah, it seems like
to
it's
make
like,
sure you stay on task and
yeah,
on topic.
yeah, and it's like this idea of like, why am I here? Am I here for the greater mission? Am I here for the acknowledgement? Like, what actually am I here for? Yeah, thank you
Because
for
you'll meet
sharing
a
that.
lot of volunteers that are there for months on end, and every day they're just on Tinder, and you're like, is this a vacation for you, or what?
Mm,
So and they might come with a prestigious background.
mm. Breathing into that and just asking
Yeah.
that that be cleared, because it's, you know, there's infiltration of that energy in any mission. And so what we're doing, and our hope is to, you know, as we even have this conversation, is to bring awareness to some of these discrepancies, and to demand that equality and egalitarianism and right right heart and like connection to the mission is like real. So when you get taken over to a place overseas, can you walk us through what it would seem like to be in the life of you for that mission?
Yeah. So what I usually do is a rotation through several countries, and I'll work for profit teaching martial arts or something in one place, and then with that money, because it's just cheaper to fly from let's say China to Laos than it is from LA to Cambodia. You know, so for me in my lifestyle, it's been a lot of that. Uh, I have contacts in the area, so I more or less just show up. I'll let them know, you know, a month in advance, but beyond that, I don't sit there and try to rely on anyone too much because they're busy people. You know, they have their own lives, or their teams are doing rescues and they can't even keep track of the rescues they've done. Because I'll go back and I'll talk with the rescue team, that's the local one that's active 24/7, and they won't even remember a case that I was a part of, you know, three months prior
Mm.
to, because they've done a dozen since then.
So you
So
collaborate with the teams that are already in place over there, and then you assist with their mission as
yeah.
awesome. Okay.
So, you know, on paper, I would just be an instructor trainer, you know, and I'm not the only one. You get guys from operation in Underground Railroad. They're
Mm-hmm.
really good guys. They show up, and then you get guys from different police departments that come out on their own volition. I don't know everyone, and I can't attest to them all, but for the most part, you know, I'll see a wall of rescues in a police station, and I'll see different teams of guys, and I'm like, that this is good. This is a good energy because you have a lot of uh, experience in a lot of the veteran communities and a lot of those type of communities. But you got to take everything with a grain of salt, because maybe one of those guys is all about it, and three of them are just there because it's something exciting and they just wanted to kick doors in.
Mm.
You know, and it's not about that. If you go too dynamic and you're one of those aggressive new nonprofits, you're going to ruin the balance for everyone that's already in the region.
So what does that
So
mean?
that's it.
What does ruining the balance mean?
So if a nonprofit just starts punching dudes in the face, you know, the rescue girls, you know, because I've known several type of guys like this that will go out and they'll rescue girls and dump them off, you know, after they rescue them to a known rescue center. You know, one they might have done an investigation for less than 2 weeks. Uh, so they don't have, you know, all the details. They don't even know the names because they probably don't have a local translator. Generally, you know, you just have a bunch of Westerners romping around trying to be a hero, uh, and they draw a lot of bad attention. So now the bad guys have a lot of say. They've got a lot of lawyers. They've got a lot of people in their pockets. They're tied into ministries and governments. So you're as soon as you're out there, you're outnumbered. So if you're out there pissing people off, okay, all the nonprofits, all these Westerners are influencing us, you know, in a negative light. Look at this guy that was assaulted. Look at this guy that's a victim when really he might be a bad guy. Uh, and then, not to get too off topic, but just to kind of give you an example of the other end of that, is one of the police I've worked with before. One of these officers, he's kind of like a Starsky and Hutch of that area. Uh, he was he's a cop now and he's part of the rescue teams, but his history was he was part of a genocide, and he was the guy that came up with an idea for how to slaughter the most babies uh, in this specific region by bashing their heads on trees. So I mean,
Wow.
you get a lot of people that, you know, are doing good now and they weren't good before. So I mean, the reality to this thing is harsh because you're trying to balance good and bad while yourself, remain good. Because I mean, if you just go and you start burying bodies, eventually someone's going to find them, and then now you're in trouble because you've slaughtered people, you've done bad,
Hmm.
and created a stain for everyone that's trying to do good. Just as a example.
Yeah. How do you deal with the fact that some people don't even think that this is existing right now?
Yeah. So again, ignorance is taught, uh, and it's common sense is not common. Um, it's frustrating because I mentioned to you the other day, literally my partner in Wyoming, he he went to a rally and had counter protesters there, to a counter sex trafficking rally, had counter protesters,
What?
uh, because he's white and he's Christian.
Wow.
So he had local BLM, and this is a town with like probably not many people of color, and you had all these, you know, uh, I'm not trying to get political here, but white liberals screaming and shouting in his face. He won't even call me back today. I'm like, "You good?"
Mm.
And he's like, "I'm trying not to punch people in the face right now, because how do you protest something like this?" But it exists, and then sometimes there's money and backing behind it, or there's just bad ideologies. I'm not a religious person myself, but a lot of these people at this group were anti-Christian, like specifically anti-Christian groups. And most of the groups I end up working with for in this specific mission are Christian organizations, missions that are trying to spread their word and their message, or at least just trying to do good, and then get around to spreading that message after they've done the good. So they, to an extent, they have an agenda, but I agree with what they're doing because ultimately it's for the greater good.
Hmm.
I can look past a person's beliefs because I'm an American. I feel everyone has a right to believe what they want to believe. Uh, so no matter what you believe, ultimately there's going to be some sort of opposition to it, as unbelievable as it might seem. I also work in places to try to do counter genocide work, and I get threats. I get people that are like, "How can you work with those dogs? They deserve to die."
Mm.
You know, and so the reality is the world's never really been you know, puppies and rainbows. The world's never been a great, you know, uh, a safe place. That's the harsh reality of what we live in. But how you get past that thinking and that negative hole is, right now when a genocide occurs, there's footage. When the Rohingya Muslims of Burma, Myanmar technically, but Burma were kicked out, people noticed. People are noticing what the CCP is doing with the Uyghur people, and they're making a lot of noise, and U.S. is putting sanctions on the people involved with that. So I mean, to some extent, at least within the U.S., we have some pushback, but depending on how things go, uh, with our politics in the future, I just hope we maintain that, because it's, we have no right to be the world's police, but at least we have a whole bunch of do-gooders willing to risk life and limb, you know, for what they believe in these places that they're not accepted, you know.
So, what are the places most often that you travel to?
Southeast Asia, so all the countries all in that region, on that whole peninsula from Vietnam to Bangladesh. That's one of the worst regions as far as human trafficking, and then there's a whole lot of drug trafficking. Depending on how you connect the dots, you could connect the Burmese drug lord generals sending opioids and fentanyl to China, to Canada, to the U.S. I mean, it's this huge circle. You can get into the conspiracies of the Contra times, from Vietnam with Air America, sending drugs from that region to the U.S. And you know, with the drugs come different opportunities for trafficking people and different opportunities for that things in that nature, which is what we're really talking about is modern day
Yeah.
slavery here, and it exists on a much larger scale than what people think. And it kind of blows my mind, you know and I say this, I'm mixed, so I'm Black, white, Native American, uh, but I've never experienced slavery myself. And I've, well, growing up in the East Coast, and then having gone to schools in the inner city, you're very studious on slave trade happening here, but you don't think it happens anywhere
Hmm.
else. Uh, no school is going to teach you that 25% of the population of Mauritania and Africa is enslaved, and that you've got places in the Middle East with hundreds of thousands of African slaves to this day. So I mean, it's a trade that never died off, and it's prevalent. And a lot of the whistleblowers and the noisemakers, you know, uh, it, in the worst cases disappear, and in the best cases just get written off as conspiracies, or get no news coverage because it's just not popular. So it's one of the things I appreciate with what you're doing is you're trying to make this popular. You're trying to bring attention to this because you need the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You need people to rattle the cage and to bring light into where there's darkness.
It still mind boggles me that people don't want to like actually believe that this is real. I was having numerous conversations with people who aren't really into the education of, human trafficking and child exploitation. And what I noticed was that the conversation switched immediately. It was like there was like an inability to hold the conversation, and like the topic had to switch, within like 90 to seconds to like 2 minutes, because there was just an inability to hang in that frequency, because there's that the inner being has a difficulty with withstanding that kind of truth. And it is a terrible truth that we still enslave children. We still enslave our women, and we still we still do this. And so, even now as I'm sharing with you and having this conversation with you, like it's still in me, and I like it wants to come out in me as like emotion, right? It's like you
Yeah,
feel just,
you want to scream
yeah.
to everyone.
Yeah, like I want to shake people and be like, "Come on, like wake up, like this is real. Let's talk about it."
My first mission back in 2016, pretty much a few months after I got out of the Marines, uh, we were able to raise almost $7,000 in a month or two. And then the second mission, a month or two, it took us maybe made like $4,500, to the point where I'm now nearly completely self-funded. If I want to do something by myself, and if I go out with my team, well, I pay for me and they pay for themselves, and I call it a pay to play game. So it gets really expensive, because if you're really trying to imbue knowledge, like you can't spend 2 weeks with a team and expect them to know everything as you know it. So
Right.
you have to spend months with them, and so we return, and as the highest frequency that we can afford, and it's literally cost me every dollar. Like I live in my girlfriend's house. I buy $1,000 vehicles and fix them up as best I can when I'm in the U.S., because usually I have to leave immediately and I just get rid of the car so I don't have to pay for payments. Uh, so and I want to give so much more, but now I'm getting to a point in my life where I need to start taking care of me, or I'll have no future for myself. So you know and so if you can make it and live that American dream and then give back, that's great. But if you're trying to be on the front line and 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 uh and really give this thing a solid push, it takes years, and it's going to take everything you have to give,
Mm.
because you know I was able to get 500 people to like something, and now I can't. I Last time I ran a campaign, I had a cousin and a brother of mine donate money, and it was like a sum of $30. And he's, not to insult them, and they did what they could with what they had, but it's really hard to keep people attentive to this while also being there. So I mean, you need a whole network. You need the whistleblowers, you need the door kickers, you need the people to pull in the reins on certain aspects, uh, and that's a really harsh balance. And most of these times they're people of the same ideology, so you're never really going to get a mixed bag uh, of with this. Like generally, race doesn't matter to me, but the almost entirety of my teams are all white, and I'll be the only one that can sit back and try to mix in with the local populace to some extent as best I can. And when I'm working with my team, I walk on the other side of the street because everyone's eyes are averted to them.
Mm.
Oh, what are these white guys? That's another, specific to Southeast Asia. Another thing that's happening is they're not even selling children or offering to, Western gentlemen off the streets. Uh, a huge influence now is the Chinese money and the Chinese market and Chinese pedophiles, because pedophiles aren't just old white guys as we like to imagine them in the U.S. They're not all Epstein-looking gentlemen. So a lot of them come from various backgrounds. They can be brown folk, they can be black folk. They're just the way they are, and sadly, we can't put them all in the ground. The world doesn't work like that anymore. Because and generally they run the world to some extent. These people with these deeper desires.
Yep.
As things are coming out finally in the news with this Ghislaine Maxwell releases and stuff like that. So this is a really interesting time, and I think you're coming on board at a good time to really help push the notion that this is real and it's relevant, not just in Asia. That's another thing too, is I want to start doing more rescue stateside. One, I'm here, I live here, and two, it's always been an issue here. Uh, we finally have a president that's actually put some plan into action. I mean, I'm no fan of any politician, uh, but at least now there's better funding than there was before, and there's actual agencies and departments within the U.S. that are focused on this. But in the reality, they're outnumbered because they've got towns that have strong MS-13 and cartel roots within the government system.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is an inside out job, and truly, it's you don't know what you're up against until it hits you in the face.
Really, and all the information that's coming out is our immediate reaction is to deny it. It's like, no, that's not
Yeah.
happening, or you're down in the rabbit hole conspiracying, and what, I'm concerned for you. I get that a lot. I'm concerned for you. I don't know where you went. And it's like, yo, like this stuff is really happening, and I'm just finally awakened to my power in sharing with the world that we don't have to be in the dark about it. We can talk about it, and the more we are aware about it, we can help people like you who are actually on the front line doing the rescue work. So when you go overseas, and of course, we would love you to stay in America and in Canada to do that work here too, but when you do go overseas, what do you notice about the demographics of the children that you're saving?
Oh, so one thing with one of the nonprofits I've worked with was Joy International, and I'm not trying to, I'm not going to smack talk. They still do good, but their founder, he walks around barefoot, and this is a really good point. This is something I can definitely respect with this man. He walks around barefoot, and he's been barefoot for over 3,000 days. And the reason he's barefoot is in solidarity with these children that generally get picked because they're walking around the trash dumps barefoot. They don't own shoes. They don't, if they don't own shoes, they clearly don't have parents, or parents that care about them. Maybe their parents are hooked up on drugs or one thing or another. and to paint one mini scenario for you, I've literally seen a gentleman gambling, and it was said that he gambled away his niece.
Mm.
And it's like, that's him right there. Oh, those are the moments where you got to hold back, but you want to dive in. Uh, so I mean, the demographics are whatever they can get. I've seen Burmese children in central markets in Cambodia, because they'll take the babies and they'll give them to women that aren't their mothers, and they'll drug the babies and they'll have them beg. And then we had that shipment of 13 tons of Uyghur hair. Get It was some ridiculous number, but it was in a high tonnage of hair taken off Uyghur Muslims. That's trafficking their parts, because in that part of the world, and it very much exists out here as well. Organ harvesting is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to specify on it because of the case is still open as far as I know. But there was somewhat recently, within the last 2 years, a very large bust. I wasn't a part of, so I'm just talking about it through what I've heard. Uh, and in this bust, 40 plus people were being harvested for their parts while they were alive. Their whole purpose in life was body parts,
While they were alive.
whether it be yeah, while for Chinese medicine or uh, some high levels of cannibalism, with embryos and spinal fluids. Oprah Winfrey and her hand lotion made from foreskin.
I
So
saw that.
I yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a huge market for this type of thing, and a lot of it can be perceived as totally sane and normal, because it's functionally sourced. But the truth of the matter is the source is not always honest. They're not just It's not just people giving up foreskin for a product. A lot of times it's taken,
Oh yeah. And like
and and that's one warehouse.
when we were having this conversation the other day, it was like it's presented to the general population as a joke. It's like on these comedy shows, and like Ellen was talking about it on her show, and she was talking with Sandra Bullock, and she was asking Sandra Bullock how her skin stays so nice, and Sandra Bullock is like stuttering while she's sharing, and she's like, oh, it comes from the skin of very young people, and Ellen says, it comes from the foreskin of a Korean boy. And everybody laughs. And it's like, how is that?
That's because in those studios too, they say to laugh, and they're like, if you don't laugh, we're not going to air this.
Mm,
So if you look at the faces of people in there, they're laughing, but they're kind of looking at each other too.
like, yeah, what is that? Like, is this real? Like, what? And it's like,
Is this okay?
yeah, is it
Yeah.
okay? And so, yeah, that's another rabbit hole for sure. So,
Hmm.
it's generally children under the age of 14, 16.
I mean, we get children. The youngest I've experienced was 4, and the oldest is, just goes into they're an adult, and once they're an adult, they generally don't want to be rescued. They see themselves as human garbage. They see themselves as a tool, and they've accepted
Hmm.
where they're at,
Yeah.
because we'll offer them opportunities at jobs, but they're like, this is the best money I can make. And, I have a kid at home, and this is the best money way I can provide them, so that they don't, end up like me. Because if they go and work at the brick making factory, if they go and work at the Nike shoe freaking shop, they're never gonna have an opportunity
Hmm.
outside of that, because they're the darker skinned people. They're the field workers of that society. They're not you know when you see a light skinned Cambodian, that person makes money, but a dark skinned Cambodian is, and this is prevalent throughout all of Southeast Asia. But someone darker skinned seen as someone that's a worker, the lower echelon, the trash, the undesirables of India. So I mean, it's a caste system that very much exists to this day. These things that we learned about in school, these horrible, horrible atrocities, they're still very, very real to this day.
Yeah. And that's just what, my role is to educate. And it's beautiful to come together with you, who's someone who's on the front line, actually creating the safety parameters and the rescue missions. And so if you
Trying at least.
well, you are, I commend you. I checked out your profile, and just hearing your voice, and you're so grounded in how you share about it. It's just like matter of fact too, because it's no longer a shock. It's your mission. It's what you're here to do. So I celebrate that in you, and I'm inspired by that, because having these conversations isn't easy, especially with those who are in complete denial of
Honestly, I don't even. This is my first interview in this of this type because I just find it easier not to talk to people anymore.
Mhm.
Uh, I've been ousted of places because I was American from European volunteers. They say, "Oh, you're a gun-owning American. You fit this narrative," and I'm like, "Do I fit your narrative? Because I'm also black, so that doesn't help." So I mean, it's you, I've as an American trying to do good over there, I've run into a lot of pushback from people because everyone's very opinionated, and I'm okay. I don't ask people their opinion, but they like to tell me their opinion.
Mhm.
Uh, and so it's just always been easier as someone that is trained a certain way, and my mindset is set a certain way, just to surround myself with like-minded people. Uh, and so literally, like, my friend circle is smaller and smaller and smaller, where I used to have thousands of followers. Um, now I've reduced myself to my core group and to the people that I actually feel uh, are significant. So it was definitely very humbling being out there and you know seeing the effects you could have on a region and on people and trying to improve it, and then to see like how little that really is, and how much more time and more money and more effort is needed to truly make a difference. So I mean, yeah, I definitely appreciate the compliment. I'm not putting that away. It just you have to stay humble in this, because if you go around walking and talking with a big chest and thinking you're a hero, there's, just as I mentioned to you, there's officers that are doing this every day,
Mhm.
and they're funded by groups like Agape International Mission. So I have a lot of respect for staying on topic, for staying in the fight. Because guys like me, we pop in, we do some training for a month, and if even a month, most of these guys are only there for a few days or weeks at a time. And my rotation is about 3 to 6 months long, depending on funding. And if I'm going to live in a jungle or if I'm going to live in a hotel.
Mhm.
So
Um,
so definitely, it's everyone has their own amount of sacrifice.
yeah, absolutely. It really changes like life changes once it's driven by mission. And so, I'm willing to go down for what
Definitely.
I share. And I think that's where the strength comes from, because it's not just us anymore. It's like this mission that's given from God, and like we just say yes, like use me in the greatest capacity. And for you, as a person who has the manpower, like the strength, you have the ability to share that with the world. And with me, it's more education and getting our population just really acquainted with this information. So when you so you're stationed over there for about 4 to 6 months, and you're training with others, and you're about to make a bust. Like, what does that like look like?
So depending on where you are and who you're working with, most of the times you're going to have to need some sort of local stipulation, like a prosecutor on scene. You need someone that's able to charge people, but that also might require that you have someone to make sure that there's no royalty on site. the other stipulations of the sort. Uh, so it's not, a big sexy, tactical event. Usually it's 3 or 4 officers that are armed, because not all of them are armed. They need more funding for weapons and weapons training. Just I think to train 10 officers, it costs $3,000 for just 50 rounds of ammunition each, plus other required materials. Like it's so much more expensive out there than it is. Like we're really spoiled in the U.S., especially our police and stuff like that. We are exceedingly well funded. Uh, but over there, it's tougher because a lot of the police have to get their weapons off of the black market. So you're sending in guys that might not even be armed and they just have handcuffs. But the threat is different over there too. Yes, you still lose officers. There'll still be gunfire, but for the most part, a raid's going to consist of, you know, in the best sense, having one team arrive early and block off the surrounding area, and then have another team, maybe split stack. One goes in the front, one goes in the back, and try to hold everyone down. And before that even happens, you need an undercover to verify, that there are girls that are underage on site. And the undercover has to be a local. You can send in your Westerners to try to gauge the area, but you need someone that really knows the language, and that is really going to put themselves up. And even those guys, uh, I might meet in passing, but they have to be protected because they're the most essential person of that whole group, because they verify. Because if you go in there and you don't find anyone, that looks really bad, and then can politically come back and hurt you and the group and get your nonprofit kicked out because you're just pissing locals off. And then so there's a lot to it, but on the dynamic side of things, it's uh, just a matter of having enough people and material in the area quickly to get the girls onto a bus, and with the aftercare agents, and to get them off site as quickly as possible. Uh, there's been times where the first team wants all the reward, so they'll go in without the security team and securing all the exits, and then half the girls will escape out the back with one of the one of the bad guys, and that happens often as well. So I mean, it's really hard to get everyone on the same page, because then you have the local issues and the very complicated politics of Southeast Asia. Because I mean, it's village to village. And then you have village rescues versus city rescues. Sometimes because of the season, you might need a boat to reach where you're trying to get to, and that's really easy because for them to protect themselves. Because anytime a boat comes and they see a white face, oh, obviously this is the preacher, or this is a mission, this is somebody that's coming to ruin our business, because our whole village lives off of this and sustains off of this criminal activity. So I mean, there's repercussions to almost anything you do, good or bad, that can come back to haunt you or haunt your team. So, I mean, it's an ever changing, dynamic environment, and that could probably be said for anywhere, even in the U.S. It's not all straight and standard here, because you also have issues with rescues on the U.S. and Canadian side with interagencies. So I mean, maybe you're a nonprofit, well, you're not an agency. So if you go and you bust a drug house, you might interrupt a DEA mission. They're trying to get to the kingpin, and you took down one of their underbosses, and now the kingpin leaves the area. And so there's a lot to it, and that's why there needs to be a lot of time and effort and professionals dedicated to this. One thing is, I always end up in instructor roles, but I always want to be a student. That's something about me, is I'm always trying to learn. I'm always reading. When I spend time in an area, I usually can teach in the local dialect, or at least by the numbers. In the Marine Corps, we're really good at oversimplifying things. So I can teach almost any one of my courses that require tactics or movement with just basic numbers. And so I have that proficiency there, but I might not have the proficiency for large scale, multi-vehicle operations. So I mean, there's always a need for more and more greater experience, and that's where my partner comes in from Wyoming, because he 22 years Army, uh, 7+ deployments under his belt. We even have a couple of Navy SEALs that we could call upon, for these type of things. It's just a matter of getting them to have the same time off that we can get off. People's lives, you got to work around a lot. There's a lot involved with it, on top of living your own life and trying to succeed in this market. And COVID has not made that any easier. And that's right now is a great time for traffickers, because there's nobody enforcing anything. There's nobody making enough noise about anything, because we've got all our infighting in America right now. We're burning our own cities. Uh, we got families not talking to each other, and so there's a real strong need for dialogue on a lot of fronts, but we can't get so distracted that we forget about the one of the greatest threats out there, and that's what we're talking about today: trafficking and modern day slavery. Because it's one thing to deal with the slavery of the past, but it's another to deal with slavery that's
Right
actively
now.
happening in our backyards.
Yeah.
And, and these guys are getting away with it because everyone's fighting and burning things down, and looking at each other, but they're not looking at those around them. Or if they see it, they're just so blind with rage that oh, I don't care about that. That's beneath me, because right now this.
Yeah, that's what I've been finding happening too. It's like, just as I had expressed earlier, there's a difficulty just staying on the topic, and it's like, well, we need to talk about this COVID issue, and it's like, well, the COVID issue is a cover for all of this, and if we're not,
Yeah,
this is like the real issue. And you had said something just previous. You said, we're looking at who this benefits. Who does this benefit? And so that's a question we can ask ourselves, like, who does child trafficking benefit? Who does human trafficking and organ harvesting and limb harvesting and child harvesting, like, who does it benefit? And if we don't know.
it's literally, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not to cut you off, but it's like a lot of people will talk about the oldest job in the world is prostitution.
Yes.
And then the second oldest job is mercenary work, which is kind of why I've never really gone that route as a contractor, because I just feel like I'm feeding into the machine
Mm,
of of society. But you have people that uh, sell sex, and then you have people that protect that, and those are the two oldest things that we're going up against.
mm.
So I mean, to really change how people think, we have to call it out, and really make it bright, really make this prevalent, so people can see what's actually, how we actually are as humanity, and and come together with it, versus fight fight each other over things that are to some extent trivial.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people who are just awakening to this truth, and how to deal with coming into awareness and finding out that this is actually true?
I think they're already doing a good thing, one, by coming into contact with people like you and different organizations, and seeing what's out there. I can't talk about every organization, just because, and every region. So I mean, it's so widespread. So I mean, make noise, and if people don't want to listen to you, don't cut them out. That's one thing that people have been doing lately, is they've been blocking people that disagree with them. You know, let it be on your feed. So, because eventually it'll come up on their feed, and maybe one day they wake up to
Mm,
it. So, I mean, don't surround yourself with only like-minded people. That's one of the mistakes I did. because now I have no one that, I don't have a flock anymore to listen to. So I mean, it definitely takes a team on this. So you have to keep at it, however much you want to put into it. All of it matters. If you're just putting in $1 a day to some organization, that matters. If you're just posting, all these Epstein informationals, that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you not everyone can give up on their future so that they can try to save everyone else's future, because you're going to burn out quick.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening to me right now. I'm burning out.
Mm-hmm.
I as COVID hit, I left Asia. I was like, I have no money. I'm going to get stuck in the jungle. I have no problem with that, but Thai visas, going to eat me up, and I mean, it's $3,000 just to fly into Cambodia right now. They'll charge you. So I mean, there's different levels you can get involved, but definitely the more involved you want to be, the more studying you have to do of your region, of the cases, and how you can help. So ask questions. I mean, that's why you have resources like you have contacted me. So I mean, if there's a direct question anyone has for me, they can use you for that. So we had to lean on each other.
Yeah.
We had to learn. No one can do all the rescues and all the good by themselves. I'll never say I did a rescue by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I've done things on my own, like I travel alone, but I work with, and they're the ones that deserve all the credit because they're the ones living it.
Mm.
Whereas me, when I have a bad day, even in Asia, I can still find a McDonald's. I can still grab a Coke and feel like I'm back in the U.S., even though I don't even drink Coke here. For some reason, it's you kind of have to drink it out there. But uh, but I digress on that topic. Just you got to keep going.
Yeah.
Don't lose hope, because you might not find it with the group that you're working with. I have no problem jumping from group to group to group. I have a good reputation with the people I work with because I've spent time there. And at first, some people in this group didn't like me. Now they like me, and then people in that group, they didn't like. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
I'm trying to do good. They're trying to do good, and at the end of the day, we're all aiming for the same mission. You just have to be mindful that while you're trying to do good, you don't end up, helping the wrong side, or making it worse for everyone in the region because you're so desperate to have a rescue that you kick the wrong door in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you said something really, really profound, is that we have to work together. And I don't know of any other mission that brings people together like children.
No, like what I told you before, like they'll step on each other's toes, these the nonprofits, because it's their good deed
Yeah.
and they're getting money for it, and some of them will work together,
Mm.
or specifically with certain nonprofits that have donated to their nonprofit from their nonprofit. So that's the dark side of capitalism, but it's a necessary evil because that's what keeps attention and money flowing in the region. Because some of these smaller nonprofits just turn into adventure tourism traps. Oh yeah, come help these poor babies here. Because when you come here, we're going to stay in this hotel.
Mm.
We're going to eat at these restaurants, and we're going to see the children at these farms. Well, what happens is they keep the children at those farms so that you can see them in their sad, dirty little faces. They'll surround the restaurant and pepper these children in these places. I mean, so you could be very well playing into the enemy's trap, or feeding into the toxic ends of these things. So I mean, in order to see that, you just that's where the time comes in.
Mm.
To be able to see, because I like looking at your feed, and people are like, oh yeah, I'm looking out for it, and you have to be vigilant, but this stuff hides in plain sight, because you'll be seeing it with no idea that you're seeing it.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can't all pretend to be experts because we watched a YouTube video that was 45 minutes long. You have to really leave it to the experts. There's agencies out there. If you really want to make a difference, support them, support the police that do that. I know a lot of police that do counter sex trafficking in the U.S. And right now, because of all the talks, they're so unmotivated. They don't even want to be cops anymore, and so we're eating ourselves with these issues, so much so that we're actually helping the bad guys. We're helping the traffickers right now by trying to defund everything. Like there's definitely a legitimate argument to better resource management, but when you just start shouting stuff like defund, but you don't think about what you're saying, you're harming the good side of things as well. So I mean, there's always two sides to a coin. There's good and bad, but there needs to be that balance, and that's where we have professionals come in, and we check with them. But for me, like I question everything when someone tells me they're good at something. I'm a bit of a cynic. I don't have the brightest view of things, but I do believe in you know uh, planting seeds of good, growing trees of good, for a lack of a better example. Just if you do a little bit of good here and a little bit of good there, it's going to keep growing. And if we have the right mentality as a community, as this awareness community is starting and grows slowly, we're really going to attract better and better people. You're going to start attracting better and better groups. You might even, this is where we can get competitive and attract the best of those counter sex trafficking groups to make our group stronger. I'm not trying to push for like a us versus them narrative, but the us versus them needs to be us capable and like-minded people need to be able to sift through the less capable people that really aren't thinking and just are reactive. One thing to tie this into like a military lesson, just to where my mind's at, is action is always faster than reaction. So if you are doing an ambush, you're acting, and if you're reacting to an ambush, you're reacting. That's always slower. You're a step behind. So if you're going to be aware and you want to do good, you need to be active and proactive in your mission and trying to do good. Don't wait for someone to come along and to tow you along the way and teach you. You have to just keep going for it. And that's why you take the baby steps and you meet people, and you meet people in different circles. You meet people from our circle. You meet the best people you can meet in vast Underground Railroad network circles. I wouldn't fall in love with any one group or nonprofit. That's where that's at least what's worked for me, is just kind of observing. I usually come on as a volunteer with these different groups, and then I'll spend a little bit of time with them, and I'll see what they're about, because you'll see that some are more kumbaya and let's give us money so we can pray for them, and then some are more, hey, we've got guys that are in the field right now, or we've got a mission for you, but we need funding, and this is tangible. But at the same note, no one's going to come in and be involved easily with the actual rescues unless they're part of the element that does the aftercare. So that there's a huge need for more people in that realm, because the rescues are easy. That's the easy part, is to find these girls, and because there's so many of them, and boys too, girls, boys. There's so many of these children, but from what I've seen, there's definitely a shortage of facilities and schools, because I love what you say about educating people, because we also need to educate these children so that they talk to other kids in their neighborhood, in these regions, and they know what to look out for, and that these people are actually not their friends because they give them a bag of rice and let them, play on their phone, because that's sometimes all it takes for these traffickers is just to tempt them or just scoop them up. There's some small islands that I've been to that within Southeast Asia that the traffickers they drive up there on motorbikes, and grab the kids.
Wow.
You know, they're so small, and they don't have the same resources we do. They don't have resource officers and people along the route to protect them. You know, just one day your kid doesn't walk home from school from his mile-long trek that he's doing at 4 years old. So I mean, uh, this is very real for people over there, and it's very real for people over here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 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 a shortage of everything. There there's a shortage of love. There's a shortage of prayer. There's a shortage of people paying attention. There's a shortage of people making enough noise and rattling that cage. So please, please, please keep rattling the cage, because already in 2017 we had legislation passed uh, through the White House. Okay, cool. Let's get more. Let's get more funding. Let's get a whole DEA of trafficking. Why does that not exist? Why do we not have an agency solely for trafficking? Like, it's one thing if the FBI has a branch, an arm, and they're well funded, but I don't know of any trafficking team like that. You know, that is a three-letter agency in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
We have a drug enforcement agency. We have tobacco, firearms, ATF, but we don't have a save the children, trafficking, save adults, even, save the Filipino workers in Dubai, save
Yeah.
save save humanity. But again, that's just my opinion from my experience, which everything I learned how much more I don't know. So I'll never call myself an expert.
Yeah.
Everything I experience, there's always something more to learn. And everyone, if you're just tuning in now, this is where your journey starts. And you can learn from my mistakes. You can learn from the mistake all of our mistakes. We learn from each other so we can
Yeah.
grow and build together. So we need a community. That's what we definitely need. If we don't have the agency, then we need to be that agency ourselves, and to get big, and to get political, and make it be something that people vote on, so that we don't have two pedophiles to vote on this election season. We don't have two creeps that have been to the island. We don't have these powerful people that are wrong on both sides. I'm actually a fan of the two-party system, because we have a more control than they do in places in Europe, where you have a small country with 13 different groups and no one has a voice because of that. But we need both. We need people on both sides of the aisle, and even the independents and everyone else in their small subgroups, to come together and be like, hey, differences aside, human slavery is not right.
Yeah.
And it goes against us. But you don't have every group saying that.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing the groups that are against that. So we have opposition. So you got to be prepared to piss a few people off. And I love pissing people off. I'm actually quite proud of myself. I don't think I've said one curse word
In this whole thing?
So yeah, and so I'm changing for the greater good. So change can come small or large, as long as it comes.
Yeah.
So we have to be the change we want to see. To reiterate on the action versus reaction, we have to take action, and we have to be loud, and we have to make these rallies. I miss it. I really wanted to go to the rally in Kingman in Arizona. Just too far on gas, but where I am in the city, I realized there's no rallies for counter trafficking, and it's good that there's these small little things, but they need to be big things, because a million man movement in the U.S. doesn't mean anything these days.
Yeah.
You had the Women's March. Okay, well, what did that do? You had all these Black Rally, BLM marches. Besides burning Black businesses, what else did they do? People, there's a lot of divisiveness, but I feel like that divisiveness is a diversion. We're infighting over these things from 100, 200 years ago, 40 years ago, more recent for some. I grew up experiencing racism. I grew up in a small town, and they called me a little nigger boy. Well, guess what? when I moved to the city, 2 hours away from where I grew up, being called the little nigger boy because of my light skin and my accent, they called me a little Nazi because I grew up amongst Pennsylvania Dutch and the Amish in central Pennsylvania. So I went from being someone that they referred to as a nigger boy to being someone that they referred to as a Nazi. Racism exists and it's ugly, um, and it needs to be addressed, but it's not as prevalent, especially in the U.S., as people being grabbed on their way home, children being grabbed and trafficked and moved, and young girls being, solicited online to meet people. I mean, I thought it was a really good direction when we had Chris Hansen on To Catch a Predator, because he had people paying attention because it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But now that show ended, and people's interest in trafficking ended because that's as far as it went for them was their screens.
Yeah.
They felt like they were doing a good thing watching the show, and okay, you got some network support, but now why did that go away? Why is that no longer a thing? Because when they do sting operations, they're going into small towns and pulling 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
They're expecting 12 and getting 20 or more. So I mean, this is definitely something we need to look at ourselves and see, how far we're willing to go to make this. And I'm not talking rebellion status. I'm just talking and noise making, cage shaking, right to your senators, right to your congressmen, and in bulk. Like, it can't be your whole church writing these letters. They're never going to get seen. But if you have the whole township talk to their representative, because that's what it takes. That's how our system works in the U.S. is you talk to your representative that represents you and your people in your region, and then they make noise. Well, if you get your representative and then you go over here and you get them to make their representative, well, now you've got the township, and then you get the township, you get the region, and then you get the state, and then now you have the best state for countering trafficking, and trafficking's brought to nearly zero in that state, and then you rinse and repeat. So I mean that's what it's going to take to make this make Americans pay attention, because we are the most capable at bringing this change to the world. I truly believe that we have that capability as a nation, that if we can come together on something and we stop this infighting, or I don't even care about the infighting. Let us keep, as long as we're debating, I'm cool. As long as there's dialogue between sides, that's cool. But what matters is we still need to come together on other issues. We need to pay attention to these other things that are happening in our backyard, because it's very real here.
I completely agree with you. And, my contribution is minuscule compared to yours. So I'm just,
Mine's nothing too.
yeah,
You're just starting, and I've
yeah,
I've been at this for 4 or 5 years, and I feel like I haven't done anything. So I mean, and that's okay. As long as we don't lose that drive.
yeah.
uh, you know, how we see ourselves is nothing, as long as we're trying to make a difference and rescue these children. Because all right, cool. Now you've rescued one child. Why stop there?
Hmm. Hmm.
Why we can't stop until they're all rescued, and this isn't a thing, and that's never going to be the case. But we have to be that beacon of hope. Maybe they hear about us. Maybe they hear about our group and they seek us out. And that's what should happen, is they should be looking to us. But right now we have to be approachable. We had to be that group that is capable of this. And the way to get capable is to make enough noise to make everyone else care about it.
Hmm.
You have to make them care, because they're not going to do it on their own.
Well, I care, and I know you care.
Exactly. I
And
care. That's
yeah,
why we're
we're
here.
here. We're here, and it's not easy. And I want to know, and I know people who are watching want to know, if they were to support you in any way, how could they support you?
Through our website, which has zero funding probably for the past 9 months. But I would right now go for the big group. So I mentioned them before. I'm a big fan of the work of
Okay.
Agape International Missions. They're a Christian organization, uh, you know, yet they worked with me, and I'm not a Christian. So I mean, just just because they're a Christian organization doesn't mean they're only going to save Christians. It doesn't mean they're going to try to make all the children they rescue to be Christians. So I mean, you've got to vet them. And as far as I can tell, I can really say that they've made a difference, because when we do these rescues, it's their funded team and it's their funded facilities. That would be one of my favorite ones, and I'll shoot you their website if I didn't already, to look up, and
So
to post.
Agape, I'm just going to write this into the comments. Agape International Mission.
Mission. Yep. AIM. So
Yep.
I think it's aim.org.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's for the mission I've been working with specifically in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, and regionally. And then as far as the U.S., I really can't speak for Underground Railroad just because I don't know anyone personally. But I'm looking to work with them in the future. I've started their online program, but they're getting blown up, and that's a good problem. That's the happy problem that they're having. Is I got the email that said, "Sorry, this is really hard to contact you. It'll take us several weeks to contact you because we've gotten so many messages." And there's no reason that other organizations can't stand up, or that haven't already stood up, and I haven't found them myself, in my own ill due diligence. So keep making noise, keep asking questions. And then, if people are listening and they have their own input, because this has just been a dialogue between me and you, but I'm sure a lot of them have really good ideas and really good resources, uh, and things that they're paying attention to. Yeah, so there's that.
Awesome. Yes. So if you want to get connected with Ryan, you can do so on, through this page, through my Facebook and his Facebook intertwining together. And you can also send him a message, or I think it's lightrescue.org.
Yep, thelightrescue.org.
Thelightrescue.org. And then if you want to
Yep.
contribute to the educational efforts that I'm assisting with my co-founder Tara, you can look at Freedom for the Children on Facebook here, or just reach out to me and let me know how I can help you help the mission, because I just know what I can do. I don't know what everybody can do, and you know what you can do, and you don't know what everybody can do. But
Exactly.
if we all say yes to what we can do, then we can all offer something that is given to us by God or universe or spirit, or however you want to say it. The intrinsic inspiration inside of us just contributes to the greater mission. And so I will thank you here, brother. And I know we'll have more conversations. I'll just have so many conversations. So I'll just keep lines of communication open with you, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
literally, just for the people listening, this is like the second time we've talked. So I mean, there's still a lot of dialogue to be had, and things that we can get clarity on, and then we're rambling through this thing. So
Yeah.
we had no plan. We just kind of talked it through. We can always do this again,
Yeah.
after doing more due diligence and research and hearing from people in the comments. So if you have ideas and you have suggestions, please, please, please comment and message, because that gets the dialogue going.
Yeah.
That's the key to this right now, is dialogue, because we want to plan solid action
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
togetherness. So
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
likewise,
your heart. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
thank you for being a face. That's one of the things that I struggle with, and why we struggle to raise funds, is we can't blast our face everywhere, because then the bad guys are going to know exactly who to look for when we show up at their massage parlor. So thank you for being a face, because that's one of the issues I've had, is we don't have many people that we could trust to be the face,
Mm-hmm.
that are going to put themselves at risk and put themselves out there and call shit out that needs to get called out. Yeah, cursed. So it needs to happen, and I'm glad it's you. And then so be vigilant and keep going, and the more noise you make, that also offers you some protection too, because you're an important asset, and a lot of people are going to worry about you and your well-being, because we have a viable enemy, an opponent that we're going up against, and there's going to be people you're going to only get more and more people that want to silence you.
You're like preparing us for like the things. And so I'm just like, okay, it's going to be okay. Like, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. And like, we've already been given the mission. So, you know, like
Yeah.
you said, if we can just have one, even one rescue is worth it, but keep on going. Let's just keep on going. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't settle for less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, if anything for rescues, it's got to be one more.
One more. Yeah.
Always one more.
Yeah. There's
Always one
this
more.
intrinsic inside of us, like inside of me. I don't know if this is the same for you, but for me, it's just like, I'm not doing enough. There's more I can be doing. There's more I can be doing. Like
Hmm.
constantly being able to do more. And so, for everyone watching and everyone listening, Nicholas says, add me in. I would love to add you in, but I'm going to the rally in Phoenix. So I can't stay longer, but I do recommend Nicholas connecting with Ryan through this thread,
Yep.
and you know, having your own conversation, because this will just keep this conversation going on air. But yeah, there's this idea of like, we're just not doing enough, and it's that fire inside of us where we feel like we're not doing enough that gets us into the mode of action. And so if nothing about this conversation was inspiring for everyone, for anyone watching, let the fire inside of you be like, I can do something. And even if it's just having a conversation with someone, that is something. And to continue having conversations of this nature, because we are bringing to light the biggest issue that's plaguing our planet. And it's not illness, it's human trafficking and child exploitation. And so thank you so much for your time, Ryan. If people want to get a hold of you, please watch from the beginning so you can get the whole thing. If you're just joining now, please watch from the whole beginning, because Ryan is just offering his heart on the issue. And it's our first time having this long conversation, of course, and
Yeah.
more conversations will come. I love you. I love you so much, brother. It's an honor to do this work with you and to be on separate sides, but still being on the same mission. And so I honor you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Take care. And I'm sure we'll talk again.
Oh, we will.
Yes.
All right.
Bless
Catch
you.
you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bless you as well. Bye.
Thanks.